It's very beneficial.
I think on that end,
And it's English and Spanish.
this calls, they have what they call a phone book.
Yes.
And they have remember you used to get the old phone books, you used to have the paper phones? Somebody, I told myself, somebody has that information, somebody has that data. So they have it. So what they'll do is, all those numbers that are still a landline, those will go out to everybody. Nobody has to sign up for it.
Well, on the school end, they do it through cell phone and landline, so there should be a way that you could do it too.
See, like, when, I don't know that I'll just leave it at that. I don't know that I ever got calls, but I'll just leave it at that.
Well, point well taken. We'll do a better job. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Lastly, the maintenance, like Mr. Reyes mentioned earlier, the maintenance on the Colorado plant has completed. And if you look at your packet, you'll see that the end results, I mean, we've already seen the pictures of before and after of the plant and all that good stuff. So the only thing that was left to display was, the logo. What you're seeing is the finished product.
This is on page,
72, 71, 72.
So, and on that end, it looks, again, well, but I think it looks nice, looks better, but I think the goal on our end, quite frankly, was, not only to make the outside look better, but the inside needed a lot of work. So while I think it looks good, I just think that the more important part was making sure that the inside was, what people were drinking, not. Anyway.
Council, any other questions? All right, Andrew, thank you very much. All right, folks, now we're moving into our open session. We've got 4 items to discuss, and so I'm going to go those one at a time. We're going to open up the meeting for public comment. I'm going to give you a chance to make a comment regarding the statement that I've read, and then we'll close after those comments are made. So with that, City Secretary, it is 6:45, and is now an open public hearing for item 7B, a request on a continual use permit for Rodolfo Obregon Jr. to place a 31 by 56 manufactured home on property located at 319 North Cherry Street, being lots 5 and 6, Block O, of the City of Pearsall, Fayette County, Texas. This is an open meeting. Opportunity for somebody to make a statement, if they care to. Is there anybody that would like to say anything regarding this issue? Is there anybody that would like to make a statement regarding this issue? All right, hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'm gonna close the meeting. It is 6:46. And with that, I'm gonna go to open public hearing for the request for a land use variance for a special condition for Jose Gonzalez III to allow an 18 by 20 accessory building for a metal carport on property located at 1309 East Medina. The property is currently zoned R1 single family residential. This is an open meeting, so is there anybody that would like to make a statement regarding the carport to be built at 1309 East Medina? Is there anybody that would like to make a comment about the carport being built at 1309 East Medina? Hearing no comment, I'll go ahead and close the meeting. Madam Secretary, let's say that's 6:47. And at 6:47, we're in an open public hearing for a request for a land use variance special condition for Ignacio Peralta for the placement of a 24 by 30 accessory building for a carport on property located at 326 North Benton. This property being legally described as Lot 9, Block 1 of the Juarez Edition, City of Pearsall, Fayette County, Texas. This is an open hearing. Is there anybody that would like to make a statement regarding the carport to be located at 326 North Benton? Is there anybody that would like to make a statement regarding the carport to be built at 326 North Benton? Hearing none, I'm going to close the meeting. Madam Secretary, it is 6:48. And last but not least, we are now in an open public hearing at 6:48 on the proposed rezoning request for Sonia Onales for JZ Enterprise request to change the zoning to R1 single and 2 family dwelling district. A 5-acre tract being lot 531, block 1412 of the Ortiz Pablo Edition West, half 10-acre tract subdivision lot 88. We are in a public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to make a comment regarding this zoning change? Is there anybody that would like to make a comment regarding this zoning change? Hearing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, it is 6:49. And with that, council, we're gonna go to our consent items. Our consent items, is a straight up and down vote. This is for our regular city council meeting minutes. You have a copy of the February the 13th, 2024 meetings in your packet. You've had a chance to review them. At this time, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Trevino, second by Councilwoman R. Garza. Is there any questions? Being no questions, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of those minutes, please say aye. Motion passes unanimously. Now, council, again, on item 9, these are all action items. So you know, on items 9C, 9F, 9G, and 9H, those are all very self-explanatory, and they're in your packet. They're gonna be consent items. I'm gonna go, when we arrive at each one of those, it's gonna be an up or down vote on those particular items when we get to them, and we'll move right along. But prior to that, we've got a couple of items to discuss. So, first off, 9A, discuss and consider resolution number 2024-0301, a resolution accepting the annual audit financial statement and opinions for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Trevino, second by Councilwoman Talamontes. At this point, I'm gonna call our representative from our CPA firm, Mr. Carl, come up. Council, you have a packet, I believe, looks like this. And Carl is going to run over that for us. Carl, welcome, and thank you guys for putting together the packet. The floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, council. We're here to discuss the annual financial report as of September 30th, 2023. Last year we had Ms. Debbie Frazier, and she was discussing the audit with y'all, and this year be taking over her role in presenting and performing the audit. And I put together a little PowerPoint to hopefully keep me on track and just go over the highlights. Do I have a slide?
She can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So this is just a kind of brief bullet points of what's in the actual annual financial report. We're not going to be going over all of it, but we will be touching on a lot of the financial highlights. I think the next slide is the independent auditor's report, or at least kind of the synopsis of it. This is kind of the most important part of the audits with the banks or any kind of lenders or anyone who really wants to know how the audit went. They'll go to these pages. It's usually page 1 in the audit report if you have a draft. And we follow the audit standards of generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. And the purpose of the audit is to actually form what they call an opinion. You can think of it kind of like your audit grade, if you will. And in the opinion that we gave is called unmodified. And it says there that that's the best opinion that we can give on the audit. So you could kind of think of that in terms of a grade of A. And anyone interested in the audit would see this and go, okay, yes, they passed. But we'll continue on now and go over some of the financial highlights. But just remember that when we're audited, or the city was audited, and you received your passing grade. The next few pages after that independent auditor's report is what they call the management discussion and analysis. And it actually goes until about page 14, where we go over the financial statements. And management discussion and analysis just really highlights and synopsis of tables and other financial data in the report. And I'll be kind of going through some of that in the slides. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the financial highlights. Well, we're required to, as a city, to have 2 sets of financial statements. The first set is the government-wide statements. These are long-term type statements. They have the city's long-term assets and liabilities, such as the debt. I'll give you some highlights here, but when we go to the fund statements, that's more in line with how the city internally has their financials, and it matches with y'all's budget. But just to give you some highlights on the governmental-wide statements, you have the government activities, and the city's assets exceeded its liabilities by $6.1 million. And if you're following along in a draft actual financial statements, this would be pages 14 to 17. Your net position, you could think of that as your equity. For the government-wide, we call it net position, but again, it's your residual. It increased by $1.6 million. And as we'll get into, primarily a lot of the increases are centered around sales taxes for the year. It actually increased about $592,000 compared to fiscal year 2022. So quite a large increase in sales tax. Business type activities, this is your water fund where garbage as well is located, gas. So this is your business type set of statements. And the assets exceeded its liabilities by $13.1 million. And your net position, again, your equity increased by about $770,000. And we'll get into a little bit more of the details of that in a minute. Okay, so the fund financial statements, again, this is your short term. If you were looking at your fund financial statements in your actual audit packet or audit draft report, you would see now that the long-term assets are gone, the long-term debt. This is more in line with how the city internal finance operates. So the general fund's fund balance at the end of 2023 fiscal year was $4.2 million, and the combined fund balance for all funds is $5.8. And I'm going to show that to y'all in a couple slides, and you can see exactly how we get to those numbers. But I do want to mention before we go and actually look at snippets from the statements, the unassigned fund balance, so again your equity, your residual, for the general fund was $3.7 million, and we say that's about 8 months of operating expenses. Now the GFOA, it's an organization that sets best practices for government entities. They say you should have about 6 months of operating expenditures in your equity. And so based on your $5.8 million, that's about 8 months of operating expenses. So you're meeting those kind of standards or best practices by GFOA currently. Another fund I just wanted to mention before we move on is the ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act. We recognized another $776,000 of expenditures this year, and that was all to fund utility, basically the water line, sewer line, and the rehab on the wells. Okay. So this is the general fund, and it's a budget to actual. So there's several columns. The first column is the line items. The next couple columns are the original and final budget. The bold 2023 column is your 2023 actual. And then we have a comparison with a favorable or negative variance between the final budget and the actual. And the last column is 2022 in case you wanted to make comparisons to the prior year. And again, you can see right off the bat, if you went to the sales tax line item, that it's about $591,000 higher in 2023 than in 2022. The rest of the revenues, they didn't fluctuate as much. That was really the one that kind of jumped off the page. Okay, and again, this is, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time with any questions. It's not a hold it to the end type of deal. If you see something that you want to ask me about, please do so. This is the start of the expenditures for the general fund, and again, we display it as budget to actual. Most of the expenditures, again, were fairly comparable. I have a note at the end on how much the total expenditures increased, but in most areas, the expenditures did increase a little bit. But the main thing I wanted to focus on, and I think Ben had mentioned that to start, was in that variance column, favorable, negative, you'll see that the entire expenditures throughout are going to be in the favorable, which means that the city spent less than the actual budgeted amounts for the year. So that bottom line, or sorry, it's kind of in the middle, excess of revenues over expenditures. You had essentially a net income for the year of $1.2 million, but total expenditures did increase about $370,000 for the year. Okay. And so this is going to display the fund balance across the different funds that you have. This is your equity. You can see that we break it down on the left side column for restricted. And if the restricted equity lines up with one of the funds, then that's where we put it. In the general fund, we did restrict the $200,000 capital improvement. That was for the playground that I believe y'all completed this year. But at the end of the last audit year, we restricted it because it hadn't been spent yet on the playground and built it. But you did end up with an unassigned fund balance in the general fund of about $3.7 million, which again we calculated to be about 8 months' expenses. So here I've displayed the business type activities. This is again your water, garbage, gas, utility fund. This is on full accrual, so if you were looking at the balance sheet, you'd see long-term assets and liabilities. But here I just wanted to show you the statement of revenues and expenditures for this particular fund. And I have there that the net position increased by $770,000, and the total revenue increased by about $433,000. I looked into it, and most notably the change was in the water section of the revenues. Gas, garbage didn't fluctuate as much, but we did see about $433,000 increase, and primarily it was all water charges. Okay, and here we displayed the operating expenditures. I did have comparisons in the actual report in the management discussion and analysis section, which shows you the difference between revenue and expenditures from last year to this year. Expenditures remain very comparable. They did not increase much from the prior year. But you do see there bond issuance costs. The city did go out and get a bond during this fiscal year for about $800,000. Had a funny discussion with the mayor on the TMRS slide. I like showing it. I'm sorry if it's too much, but I just wanted to point out one line. This is the city's retirement plan. I like to show this every year just to kind of go over just really one line item. About almost all the way down, there's a net investment income. It's right above benefit plans. And you can see that in one column it's a negative $580,000, in another column it's a positive $580,000. It's actually really think of it as a negative. And what the net investment income line is, this is the unrealized gains and losses of the city's investments in TMRS. Now granted, your funds are taken as a whole with everyone else who's contributing, but the plan actually lost this year $580,000. And you might be thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot and that could be very serious, but in reality, and we were going over with the mayor, there's very much swings of peaks and valleys with this investment income line item. And last year you actually had a net pension asset of $566,000. This year you have a net pension liability. But the main thing to consider, again, we go back to the GFOA. The GFOA says that the pension plan should be at least 70% funded. And TMRS is very good at making sure that y'all are well funded. You're actually at 93% funded. So you're well over the 70%. And even though this year may look like, oh, we have a almost $600,000 liability, I bet you next year it'll probably be the other way or a lot less. It just kind of goes through peaks and valleys, but you're well funded. Okay. And that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to call me or you can email me as well. If you want to go into any more detail on any of the other matters in the draft, I'd be happy to talk to you. Do you guys have any questions for me at this time?
Kelton, just again, want to appreciate Carl and staff, Debbie, for doing such a fine job on our audit. And a thing to notice, which we're going to continue to talk about, basically is the gas fund. On the business side, you show we had overall in the red of about $150,000, and that is after a $386,000 more or less attributed loss in the gas system. So we're going to continue to talk about that system. That is a system that is we need to put a lot of focus on. But overall, again, the general fund side reflected a positive $1.2 million, and the other side is we're in the red of about $150,000. So overall, we're really doing good. And again, hats off as we have some major capital investment in our wastewater treatment plant. As you guys know, a couple of months ago we talked about that. We're fixing to roll that off, and that's coming straight out of it. We're not having to borrow it. We have the money in order to do that. And hats off again to our staff for being fiscally responsible and keeping the budget online, and Fred keeping pretty tight reins on the purse string. So we're grateful for that. And Carl, again, council, do you have any other questions for our accountant? And again, that we're at 93% of our pension fund, that is hats off again. We're in good shape. I know it's like, what was that? What did you say? But anyway, that so goes the market. So anyway, it is somewhat of a normal event, but being at 93%, I think that gives our employees, or should give our employees, a very comfortable feeling that their pension's in good shape. Anything else, council? All right, Carl, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Sorry. We got AEP here, but we did pay our lights. Did I miss one? Which one?
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.